Hi, everyone. This is Krista Moore, and welcome to the Krista Moore Show. As you can see, I'm in the home studio today. Many of you know that I've been on the road, taking the show on the road. So it's kind of nice to be back in this comfortable studio. It's interesting because my guest today is actually joining us from an RV. So we had a little chat earlier about the RV life and experience. So he'll be coming to you from an RV. But one of the things that I love to do is share stories of passion and purpose. And I believe that we all are born with God-given gifts, and it's kind of up to us to figure out what they are and give those gifts back to the world. And when we do that, then we're really living with passion and purpose and meaning. And when I came across my next guest, I kind of stumbled across him in LinkedIn, and I was reading more, and I thought, oh gosh, I want to learn more from him. I want to understand what he's been through and what he's able to do by giving his gifts back to the world. So I'm thrilled to have you meet my guest today. His name is Craig Brown, and he is a recovery pastor as well as a best-selling author, and coming to us from Fort Myers RV Park somewhere in Florida. Hi. Craig, how are you?
I'm fine, Krista. Thank you. I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Oh, and one thing too to let everybody know is the first time that we're actually meeting in person.
I know.
Kind of fun. I'm looking forward to learning more about your story and everything that you're doing in your church today. So let's kind of start off by you telling us a little bit of the backstory and who you were, not who you are today, but who you were and what was happening in your life before you had, well, I'd like to say, kind of the awakening.
Oh, was it ever an awakening? Well, I'll start. I'll give you a brief from youth. I grew up in the church. My dad was a minister, and it was a mainline denomination. The Brown family, we always had to be on. We had to make Father Brown look good. There was a lot of pressure put on my sisters and I to always, make Dad look good, make the family look good. And it was a rather interesting environment to grow up in. I loved growing up in the church itself, but well after the fact, when I was looking back, I just realized that it was rather dysfunctional. My dad, loved my dad. He's since passed away, but what I saw from the pulpit was entirely different from what I saw in our home. My dad had his own struggles, his own demons, his own issues. As all families have their own stuff. Ours was a little bit different because, we had that environment, and yet we had to walk out the door and we couldn't share anything.
Yeah, so you're putting on a mask or putting on a different face. What will people think?
Well, I think that's the second chapter, Why We Hide, in my book. And I learned early, and we all do. We all develop coping mechanisms, coping skills, escape plans when we're young, when we have to deal with pain, discouragement, abandonment, hurt. And, it just didn't appear my dad was much invested in me, and I was searching. And he just, I could count on one hand, like a father and son things that he and I did, and I'd still have fingers left over. Yeah. He just didn't seem to be interested in my interests or invested in my interests or nurturing that love, that emotional.
I have a question on that, Craig, because when that's happening, and that's part of our past, and you talk a lot about creating a new past and understanding your past and how important that is.
Right.
But as that was going on, did you even realize it? Or was it later that you realized that you hadn't dealt with it?
Yep.
And so that's when you turn to drugs and alcohol. I mean, what is the connection there for you on the pain that you went through and kind of trying to
medicate
it.
and escape from it.
And escape from it.
Well, you don't know. When let's face it, all of us in our youth experienced all kinds of different life issues, life struggles, and what have you, and you don't quite realize that at the time. At that age, I thought our family was kind of perfect. I didn't
Hmm.
know. I didn't have anything to compare it to. I didn't know any better. You know, why didn't he come to my? I played 4 years of varsity basketball. Why didn't he come to my games? I played other sports. Why wasn't he involved? I saw other dads there and what have you. I guess he was busy,
Hmm.
and there is a longing, sure, and there is a void, and you're going to fill it one way or another. And I try to get coaches or other mentors or someone to help me or to guide me. Not necessarily I was doing that in an assertive way or an intentional way, but I was kind of hoping,
Yeah.
and so by the time I got to high school, I started drinking. I got to college, in the drug scene, and then I dropped out of college and it ended up in DC and working for a business owned by the biggest cocaine dealer on the East Coast in the early 80s.
Hmm.
All that, everything, leading up to that, I had no self-discipline, no self-control. I had no purpose. I had no mission. Nothing was instilled or nurtured in
Yeah,
me.
and
And
it almost feels as though that void you were trying to fill was acceptance and belonging.
oh, sure, absolutely. We all want to be accepted. All
Hmm.
of us all of us were designed to want to be loved, to want to be accepted, to want to have a purpose and mission in life. We're all designed with that. It gets totally clouded over if we don't have a real good, firm, loving, caring, emotional, mental, physical, and spiritual discipline. And when we
Yes.
don't have it, we're going to fill it some way, shape, or form. And I did,
You know, there
and I
was,
ended up in the pit of hell.
I'm going to read something that I highlighted um, because it really connected for me in terms of the core of your message in
Mhm.
your book. The consequences of unresolved pain leads to, and then you've got this list, right? um, Addiction, self medication, codependency, food issues, pornography, sexual addiction, poor behaviors, poor decision making, unhealthy life patterns. And as I'm reading that, I'm thinking that is what's connected to this unresolved pain, this emotional pain
Yes,
that all of us have in
yes,
some way, shape, or form. And
right.
many of us don't address it or deal with it. And then it leads to missed opportunities or, poor decisions or, character issues or, and worse, addictions. So
Exactly.
when you talk about stop, stop and start something, you're talking about stop the pain by
Stop
stop
hiding from it.
hiding and start healing. And there's this direct, almost immediate correlation between the two.
Totally.
And
Absolutely.
that to me really jumped out in the book. And so I felt like the book was really for anyone,
It
not
is.
just someone who's, maybe an alcoholic or has an addiction and is looking for a process to, create more of a Christ-centered recovery. It's so much more than that.
It
Um,
is.
and and that's where I'd like to get your expertise today.
Okay.
That one saying that was consistent throughout about when the pain exceeds the
You're in
fear.
fear. Yep.
Tell me about that statement and what that means to you.
It means everything to me because it totally changed my life forever when the pain was greater than my fear of changing. Pain is paralyzing. It's inhibiting. It keeps us in bondage. We will do whatever it takes to run from it. It's not natural for us to just embrace it. Oh, good, I have pain. Oh, I have a major life challenge. Okay, What's my action plan? What am I going to do first? How am I going to address this? What's my approach going to be emotionally, mentally, spiritually? It's not natural for us until we get to the place where we start working on our life and developing self-awareness, experiencing healing, that we learn the step-by-step process. The biblical blueprint is in the Bible. I'm a big fan of a spirit-filled, Christ-centered action plan to get from brokenness to wholeness. But it's the fear. Everything we've ever wanted in life is on the other side of fear. You and I have both been in business. We have a lot of business experience, and the same is true in business. You didn't get that promotion. You didn't hit your goals. You're not as successful as you thought you were because there's a fear. There's some type of fear ceiling that's in your way to advancement. You didn't get that. You didn't get that management position you were hoping for, that VP position. There's a level of fear, and there's also a pain level. And it's usually, we look at it, in that environment, it's like, what am I, I'm just a failure. I'm not good enough. I'm afraid of success. And then all of a sudden the pain level gets to a certain place, and you have this self-awareness, and it's like, I'm afraid to take the next step to advance my career, or I'm afraid to take the next step to deal with my pain because of the shame. I'm afraid of embarrassment. I'm afraid of what people will think about me. I'm afraid of changing because all I know right now is pain. All I know is life struggle, and that's my comfort zone right now. And I'm afraid to go to the next level.
But when you get to that point where it is so intense, that you're saying, okay, I'm no longer afraid, and I need to make these changes.
I'll do whatever it takes to get well.
And you were using, just even the correlation of working in corporate America. I mean, I know specifically a time when I personally was feeling a lot of struggle and pain and challenge internally, and I just left and never went back. Because I was afraid to leave and not have another job lined up, and I'm like, screw it, I'm out of here, because I had it. So
right.
So I really can relate to this whole pain, fear kind of thing.
Sure.
Now, there's also a lot of people that know that they need help.
Yes.
That are hiding that pain because of the shame and the guilt that you're referring to.
Right.
And you meet them, you know them because of the service that you're in.
Yes.
What would you tell those out there that today are hiding from that pain, and what's the first step that you would offer to someone today?
We've served thousands of people over the last 22 years, and I've seen so many different people, successful when they reach that level where they're no longer afraid to get help. Especially in church, people hide in church all the time. It's one of the best places ever to go hide, right? Best place to hide. But here's the thing, Krista, I hear this over and over and over again. When people finally get to our ministry and they tell me after a while, I should have been here 5 years ago. I should have been here 10 years ago. I should have been here 20 years ago. 12. I had a woman share with me last week, 2 weeks ago. I should have been here 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And they can, and that just pains me. But I'm not that codependent where I'm powerless over what decisions they make. We just are. But it's when you reach that point, and again, it's not just one experience or a few experiences. It's a lot of life experience, involving death or divorce or abuse or trauma, or addiction or life struggles, and they just add up. They
build upon each other,
build and build and build. And I felt this way, and I know others do too. You want to get help, you want to be able to speak up and say something, but you are so scared because you don't know what the other side. Well, so spiritually, biblically speaking, it's about faith. It's about hearing, God's word. It's about letting that just penetrate that fear. And that's if there's anybody that can break that stronghold, it's the Lord. We all. I mean, that's the only thing I know. I tried everything else. People try everything else.
I want to share with you, and I don't know. I can't remember. I listened to a podcast that you were on recently, and you shared the story, your personal story, in terms of your relationship with your father.
Mm-hmm.
And he was dying in the hospital,
mm-hmm.
and you felt the call to go and visit him, and your relationship was, not solid. And there was a defining moment for you when your personal realization of that pain, and whether it had to do with forgiveness at the time or him passing, but you put your hands on your head and you prayed, and your life changed because you asked for help.
Yes, I did for really the first time. I didn't know who. Well, I didn't know who else to go to. I mean, here's a guy that I was not estranged from. I loved my dad. I'm his only son.
Yeah.
I'm his only son. I loved my dad. I longed to have a relationship with him, longed to have that with him. And here I'm an adult guy. I'd extricated myself out of that drug life, that pit of hell, for 6 years up until that point. But my life was still miserable. Because why? Because I hadn't dealt with any of the pain, the hurt, the shame, the guilt, and the trauma that I just put myself through. My own decisions. Nobody else did it for me. I did it myself. But I blamed God, and I blamed everybody else, including my dad, who was very ill and dying. So my sister called. We got to the hospital, and I stood by his bedside, and I just appreciate God and his. I think I said sense of humor. I don't think it was a sense of humor, but he just allows pain and uses our pain when we're willing to get us to the place of complete surrender. He knew better than I did. He knew better than I did that by standing by my dad's bedside, that I would fully, completely surrender. And it was that next day I just walked out of that hospital. My whole life came before me. I realized I'm just a failure, and my dad's in there in intensive care dying. I just couldn't take it anymore. That was it. That was the last experience, straw, whatever you want to call it. So I did. No one led me. I was so far from God, I didn't know where he was until the next day I cried out. And Psalm 107 says this, that, we cried out in our despair. We cried out, and he heard our cry, and he rescued us from the pit, it says, and he snapped our chains. Mine were snapped, and it's been that way for a lot of years. And that was my first day of recovery, Christ Center recovery. I immersed myself. I immersed myself in it, and I wasn't afraid anymore. I could care less. I could have cared less about anything, anyone, shame, anything. I was done.
When you said snapped the chains, I remember in your book, you were referring to snapping the chains because you've kind of came out of hiding, or the secrets revealed.
Yep.
And totally. Just that action being done, that freedom that you received.
Yeah. It changed me. See, people have different epiphanies. People have different defining moments in their life. They can be major, medium, light, you name it. I mean, God works in some cool ways, man. Just awesome ways. Mine just happened to be, I don't know if it's a parallel between the amount of pain or the pain level is equal to, the miracle. I don't know. I have no clue.
Yeah.
But I was so different when I stood up after praying. I was so different immediately
Mm-hmm.
that I that's why I can't hold on to it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
need your listeners and anybody that would hear me or just read that the same can happen for you. The same freedom, the same chains that have wrapped you in pain and shame, guilt, trauma, whatever, can be snapped
mm-hmm.
if you ask for them to be snapped by the only one that can change, heal, fix, and restore
Yeah.
us. Programs can't, my spouse can't, your family members can't, your well-meaning friends can't,
Mm-hmm.
that group you go to, helpful, accountable, nurturing, but it's only God's the only one that can do it.
Yeah. It's a beautiful story. Beautiful story. And one of the things that is an outcome of that, I mean, you're now 35 years sober. You're
30,
20
yep,
plus
last
20
week.
plus years in recovery ministry. So what you've done from a living with purpose and taking your passion is you
Yes.
have discovered who you're meant to be
Yeah.
and what you can do to give that back and give that gift back to the world and have impact on thousands and thousands of people. And I love
Uh,
that.
yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Just this morning, Debbie and I were chatting over coffee, and I said, you know what's interesting? Um, for a long time, I was, because I didn't have it from my dad, I didn't necessarily get it from my basketball coaches or any. I was looking, not actively, dying for a mentor. I just
Yeah.
wanted someone to put their arm around me at any age and say,
Mhm.
listen, I've been there. I would encourage you, try this,
Mhm.
or I noticed this in your life and observe, I've been there. Do this. This really worked for me. And I told Debbie this morning, I said, what's interesting? I looked and looked and searched and prayed for that guy. And now I am that guy
You are that
forever
guy.
for the other men and that I've cared for all these years. I am that guy now. I am who I needed all those years. Go figure.
And I love it that you had that conversation this morning, right? We're
Yes.
always rediscovering these things, and it does take the personal reflection time
Yeah.
and understanding ourselves, accepting the past, in order to come up with those kind of revelations, right?
Well, it's all about self-awareness, Krista.
Hmm.
It's what's missing in our world. It's what's missing in our culture.
Hmm.
Self-awareness,
Hmm.
truly. And Christ-centered recovery is all about self-awareness. The Bible is to help us develop and realize our worth, our mission, our purpose, and our self-awareness. What are our weaknesses? What are our strengths? What are my character defects? What are my shortcomings?
Yeah, let
It's
me ask
very
you a
clear.
question around that because that was one area of the book that I really enjoyed, and I learned a lot from when you were talking about character defects
Mhm.
and tying that back into continuously rediscovering and doing a daily inventory. I think is
Yes,
the term that you used.
correct.
Tell me more about that method of daily inventory and what that can do for someone.
Well, it's extremely helpful. And here's the back up. The most important thing we can ever do in our life is learn about us.
Mm.
Learn about what are my fears? What are my strengths? What are my
Mhm.
weaknesses? What are my character defects? What are my shortcomings? Of course,
What do I
Debbie,
love? What am I great at?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it
Mm,
has to be balanced. If
mhm.
we've in recovery, a lot of people, quit and give up because they're focusing too much on the negative.
Yes.
And you have to balance it with what's good, and that's why a daily
Mhm.
inventory is really important. When it comes to defects, my wife is, she's dealing with her 4 and I'm still on 168. So, you know how that goes. But we have them. It's so revealing because I just taught on this recently and I put out a list. There were really 188. There's a list of 188 things that can be classified as a character defect. And our group was like, my gosh, I had no idea. And we have no idea because I didn't I don't know what I don't know. And when you see it on paper and you're like, wow, I do struggle with that. And that's the beauty of it. And the best thing we can ever do is develop our self-awareness. And something I've worked on extremely hard. I'm not done. I've got a lot of work to go, to do. But it's if you do it every day, a simple list. Who did I show love to? Did I get angry today? What was my approach? What was was I triggered today? Did I avoid any warning signs that could sneak up over the next couple of days, weeks, or months? And those types of things. And did I receive love from anybody? What am I grateful for? Simple questions every day.
Yeah. And you were talking a lot about the power of journaling, some of those things too.
Oh yeah.
When
time.
the character defect, I guess I use the term more character flaws. It seems softer.
Yes.
It feels better, right?
Well, you're nicer than I am.
That's like,
I'm a
not
little bit more rough around the edges.
I'm just flawed. One of the things.
I'll change the flaw. That's a good word. Let me write that down.
One of the things that I got from reading that was we're quick to blame our past or our family or our circumstance instead of accepting that that's part of who I am and how I got here, but it's up to me to make the changes.
Absolutely. Oh, I don't have enough time. Krista, I blamed everything, everyone, anyone, everything for my poor decision-making and my pit of hell experience. Everyone. One of the most liberating moments of my life was being honest with myself, God, and someone else I trust. Liberating. And when you're able to do that, and the scales come off your eyes, humility enters in, and you just realize your false reality is being shattered, and a new, healthy, spirit-filled reality is being built. It's just phenomenal what can happen and how healthy you can get when you enter into that place and realize hey, this is on me. This is on me. It doesn't stop once. Denial's never just once. Healing happens over and over and over again. Going from good to great can happen in any category in our life. But, it's always ongoing. That's the beautiful thing about life, is that it's always ongoing. Our testimony changes, the people change, our seasons change. Keep it fresh, keep it ongoing, and don't let it ever, get stale. And when we do, that's when we set ourselves up for trouble.
It's hard. It's hard work.
But it's the best hard work one should ever do in their life is about them, especially when it comes to codependency. And I see it often. I struggle with that to a certain degree, and just working through that as well. But it's, I see it so much in marriages and what have you. And especially when couples come, I always tell them, this is about your individual recovery. This isn't about couples. We're not doing couples recovery here. Each of you are going to do your own path, because each of you have your own issues, your own struggles and things. Yes. And you can do marriage counseling and what have you on a parallel basis, on a parallel track. But recovery is about the personal side of your recovery. It's not about the other person. You don't bring up the other person in that. This is about you.
It's about you.
And the more healthy, healing, restored I can be, the better husband I'm going to be for my hot wife, Debbie. I mean, it's just the way it goes. And I tell spouses all the time, it's about you, not stop talking about her or him. You'll have plenty of time to do that. Deal with your own issues.
And I think it's fair to say, too, when you refer to codependency, that is an outcome of perhaps a pain or a trauma or a situation that has not been healed.
Totally. It's
an example of that.
Untouched, hidden pain will manifest itself in that way for you to become a people pleaser. Oh, if I do this for him, or if I do this for her, if I do, if I try to please them and do whatever I can to make their life better than our marriage, and it's going to be nice, it's going to be healthy, and it's restraining, it's just paralyzing. No, that's not what God meant. It's not what he meant for couples and for relationships. You're your own person. Love and you know what? The other part of it is people have trouble loving themselves. People have trouble forgiving themselves. And therefore they can't forgive. Oh man, we could keep going, Krista.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a deep one, isn't it?
It's deep stuff, but it's beautiful.
But
Beautiful stuff.
I think what I'm learning from this, though, and I am learning from your book, is that we all have our own stuff, right?
Well, yes.
We all. I mean, and to one person it might seem minuscule, but it's real to us.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
And we've got to deal with it in order to break those chains, so to speak. And one of the things that I learned in my own self-discovery was similar to what you're talking about, just really reflecting back on how I was brought up and my relationship with my parents. And, you go through all of that. But I remember going to therapy for the first time. And that was the first time that I felt that I was in a safe, secure environment. And I was able to share things that I probably have never shared before in my life, right? Because of the way that was structured. And for me, that was freeing. That was healing in a lot of ways. What are your thoughts on just therapy in general, or kind of like that safe environment, which is what you have in your recovery?
That's you mentioned the word safe. Safety, safe.
Where you're not going to be judged, where you don't have to feel the shame, where you're loved.
And that's why people are afraid. That's why fear trumps their pain, because they've never had a safe place in their life. They've been betrayed, they've been gossiped about, and they've been hurt over and over and over again. So therefore, naturally, you would get to the place where there's absolutely no one out there that can help me. And that's it. That is the truth. That's just real, but it's not. It's actually, that false reality that enters in. There is a safe place. Yeah. And you just said it, and that is being around safe people and people you can trust. And we have nurtured that safety for 22 years at Church of the Redeemer, where you will not be judged. You'll always be accepted. You'll be cared for, supported, prayed for, and you'll find accountability, relationship, education, learning, and growing and healing in a safe environment. Because you get into that small group and it's intimate, and you'll be able to learn how to trust over the next weeks, days, months, years, however long you're going to be there. Trust is another big word, but safety is amazing. And I'm a firm believer in a network to help us heal, either pastoral care, Christ Center Recovery, a good, sound therapist, counselor, Christian counselor, if you are a believer.
And the right people around you, the right family around you, and finding
assemble the right people. Yeah. Well, my book, if your family is totally unhealthy, unsafe, hurtful, challenging, find another one. And right. you find them in church, not a biological family, but a more healthy, caring, loving, accepting family. And they're all doing what you're doing. And you know what the underlying foundation for everything we do? Empathy. Empathy. It's missing in our society. Number one, I don't know if the church should really capitalize on it by getting the people that have been from hell and back to help others in their struggle. And that's what we've done. Our pastor's been very, very clear and focused over his 35 years of ministry of doing just that, empathizing with people that are coming in struggling and surrounding them with people that have been to the valley and back, who understand pain, darkness, depression, anxiety, struggle, life struggle, addiction. If you're struggling in that, then you want to be around the people that have the scars.
That's right.
I want to follow them.
And that they're open and listening and understanding.
Open, totally transparent. They're open, transparent, and vulnerable, but with real good, healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
healthy boundaries.
One last question, and that I'd like you to describe for me what you mean when you refer to creating a new past or building a new past.
Sure. From a spiritual perspective, if you've never had a relationship with God and you ask God in to take over your life, well, the Bible tells us in Corinthians that you are a new creation. You're a new creation. So whatever you were before that day, that moment, right? You start brand new on that day, on that moment with a relationship with God.
Now
right?
you have a new past.
Then you begin
From
to
that day forward.
You begin to create a new past with God and Jesus as your Lord and Savior, higher power, healer on that day. And then you begin a new past of healing, restoration, hope, purpose, mission with God. And not everybody grasps it on that particular day. I wish I could say that as soon as you make that decision, everything goes away. It doesn't. It remains. So therefore, on that day, when you become a new creation, then you begin your recovery. Then you begin to process, work on your past pain, whatever that struggle was, your old past, address it, work on it, admit it's there, heal from it, process it, grieve through it. And then from the day you said yes on forward, you've created a brand new past. So you don't look back in despair. You don't look back at the pain. You're looking back over those coming weeks, months, and years, looking back in hope and what he's done in your life.
And as it came up, are we back on? Can you hear me, Craig? Great.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you would like to mention or to say as we wrap up this conversation? And there's so much we could talk about. We could be here for hours. And I encourage those that are interested in this subject to get your book and read it. I have it highlighted. It was very powerful. I have to say it's interesting because as I started reading it, I'm like, oh, this doesn't apply to me. This doesn't apply to me. I don't have an addiction. I don't have a problem. And then I'm like, wait a minute. We all have some stuff going on here. And so as I accepted that, maybe chapter 2 or 3 in, then I'm like, wait a minute. He's speaking to me. And he's speaking to everybody.
Exactly. Yeah. We're all in recovery.
Yeah, that was my experience. I wanted to share that with you.
I appreciate that. Yeah,
here's some contact information. So I want those to know how they can reach out to you if they have any questions. And also I put the Church of the Redeemer in Gaithersburg, which you're a pastor and one of the pastors. And I wanted you just to maybe tell us some closing thoughts in terms of what would you like people to hear?
Well, those that are listening, that maybe there was something that either Krista and I said that touched your heart in some way, shape, or form. I mean, the whole point of testimony, the whole point of sharing and being vulnerable, transparent, open, honest, and real is to have you realize that whatever you're struggling with, there is a way out. There's a way to heal. There's a way to be restored. It's not hopeless. It may seem that way, but it's not. And I tell folks often, everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. And what I would recommend you do if you are struggling with anything, Krista mentioned it, and that is finding the right people. There's a great ministry called Celebrate Recovery, and they're in thousands of churches around the country. And I would go to celebraterecovery.com and look on their website, see if there's a church near you that hosts it. And that's a wonderful place to start, to be walk in to a Christ-centered recovery environment. where you can find trusted people, people that understand. And that's so important for you if you're really struggling. And that is finding the right people and finding people you can trust. If you're anywhere in Maryland and you're listening to this, or in Gaithersburg, Church of the Redeemer, love to have you come join us. And if you ever want to reach out, I'd be more than happy to share with you. You can reach me at any time at any of the contact information that Krista has shared here. But my encouragement is this, is that I never thought I'd ever get to today. I never thought I ever would. And it was only God that took over my life and changed everything. And he can do the same for you, regardless of your church experience, regardless of where you are, anywhere in life. He loves you. He adores you. He created you in his image and wants nothing more than for you to have a life of purpose and mission, whether in your marriage, whether you personally, whatever that may be. He can do that for you.
Yeah.
He did it for me. And I know, I am confident he'll do it for you.
We have someone that was watching the live that wanted to ask your advice. And
Sure.
so this, you can maybe make note of her name and
Sure.
she can reach out to you.
Absolutely.
And we'll show that slide again with your contact information. And maybe the two of you can connect and have a conversation. Or
absolutely, you can reach out through the Facebook page. Stop Hiding, Start Healing. Absolutely.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, I can't thank you enough. I think that I might have enjoyed this more than you or our guests.
Well, I don't think so. I think we're equal. I think we're equal.
On that.
Yeah, definitely equal. Yeah, I appreciate the invite. I was really looking forward to it. Love the time. Hope we can, we'll see you in the next RV park somewhere.
I'm sure we'll have to stay connected. Our paths are going to cross again, I'm certain of.
I know. Go figure. Well, I'm glad I was able to join you on the road.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
I just want to thank everyone for taking a few moments and listening to today's show. I'm hoping that it touched your heart and that you are starting to feel like you can make a difference and you can make the changes that you need to in your life. So good luck with all of that. And I hope to see you soon on another show. Take care. Thank you.